Today we're making a DIY sleep mask. This is a slightly oversized design, so it's going to cover most of your forehead and nose, and I've made this extra soft, so we're using 2 layers of cotton batting for this. This is a great way to use up any scraps of fabric you have. For this sewing project you'll need an eye mask pattern. I'm using the free one from threadsmonthly.com. You'll need a large scrap of cotton fabric. It needs to be the size of about 2 of these. Cut a strip of fabric that's double the length of your elastic. You need fusible interfacing that's about the same size as your cotton fabric, cotton batting, and elastic. I'm using 1/4 of an inch, but you can go slightly bigger too. So first we're going to fuse the fabric. Now leave the fabric to cool so that the glue can properly set. Use your mask template to cut out 2 of these. And this line, that needs to be parallel to the selvage edge. You can pin it in place or just use some weights. And we want to clip into these little notches. Okay, now you want to cut 2 rectangles of cotton batting, and these should be slightly bigger than your mask pattern. Then get your mask pieces and place them on top. And we want them just in the middle so that when we sew these together, the cotton batting has the freedom to just shift without running out of space. Now we're going to pin these and then sew them with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm just sewing literally on the edge. So I've got both of these stitched onto the cotton batting now. I'm going to pick one of them and trim the cotton batting. You can get your elastic now, and if you just want to use your raw elastic, you can just put it where the notch is and pin that in place. Give that a quick stitch on either side, and then just sandwich it between the 2 pieces, right sides together. And then I would just sew all the way around, leaving a 2-inch gap at the top where the notches are. And then I would just pull it out. Or what I'm going to do instead is create a matching casing for this. We're going to press that in half and then press the seam allowances in. And then stitch along that line. Just going to press it with the iron to hold that down while I sew it. Okay, now grab your elastic and you can attach a safety pin on one end, and we're going to feed it through that. I don't have a safety pin on me, so I'm just using this thing, tying it on the end. So here, I'm about halfway through feeding it, and the elastic is about to go into the tube, which I don't want. So I'm just going to line it up with the bottom of the tube. Ooh, gosh. There we go. And I'm just going to go and stitch that bit so that I don't lose the elastic. Okay, and I'm going to carry on feeding the rest of the elastic through. Okay, and it's out. And I'm going to do the same thing where I sew the top of the elastic and the top of the band together. Okay, we're going to get one mask piece and we're going to attach this to the knot where the notches are. I'm just making sure that the bit that we sewed at the bottom is all facing in one direction. So where that notch is on the side of the mask, I'm just going to put the elastic just in the middle. And I'm going to pin that in place. I really want to check that the elastic is going on symmetrically, so I don't want one higher on one side and lower on the other side. I'm just going to stitch it, and I'm doing my stitch inside the seam allowance because I don't want this appearing on the right side of the mask. And I'm putting the other mask piece right sides together, and I'm making sure the band is sandwiched in between the mask. I don't want it sticking out. I'm just going to go ahead and pin that in place. So when you get to the top, you'll see the notches that we cut out. So we just want to make sure that we keep that area open because that's how we're going to pull this all inside out. So what I'm going to do now is start sewing at one notch, go all the way around, and I'm using a 2/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then I'll stop when I get here. So the seam allowance is 2/8 of an inch, which means that for most of us, all we have to do is line up the edge of the mask with the edge of the presser foot, because this is 2/8 of an inch. And remember to back stitch as well at the beginning and end of your stitching. When you get to the bulky bit with the elastic, just make sure you go over it like maybe twice, back and forth, so that it's really reinforced, because this is an area that's going to be under a lot of stress. One thing you want to make sure is that the elastic isn't getting caught up in the stitching, so just make sure you give it a little push if you feel like it's getting in the way. And feel free as well, as you're going around the curves, to just stop, leave your needle inside, and then lift the presser foot and just pivot so that you're sewing your curves properly. Okay, I'm now going to go and trim the excess cotton batting. Okay, now areas where there's a lot of curving, especially around here, I want to go in and clip little triangles. And what that will do is when you flip this out, it will just help the curves lay flat. So I'm trying to get as close as I can to the stitching without actually going through it. Okay, now I'm going to go back over and just trim the seam allowance down to about 1/8 of an inch, apart from this area, because we still need to stitch that, so we don't want to get rid of the seam allowance over there. Okay, now we can flip it inside out. The easiest way to do this is just to grab the elastic and then pull. Now I'll just poke out all the curves. So I'm going to fold the seam allowance in for the gap. Get on your sewing machine and top stitch that, or you can do an invisible hand stitch. So what I'm doing is taking one small stitch from one side and then from the other side as well. And when I get to the end, I'll put my needle through the loop of fabric and just pull that, and I'll do that a few times. The last thing to do is just give it a press with the iron. I'm going to use a pressing cloth to protect the fabric, and that'll just help all of these lines be really crisp. Here's another one that I made using the same pattern, and this one's using a slightly lighter weight cotton fabric. My next version of this is going to be in a silk, and I've changed the method a bit for this fabric. I'll leave a link to the video if you want to see how to make this in a silk fabric.